ourselves how to factor. That's going to be the main goal of the day. Something you just can't go without being able to do. You should have a note card that tells you how to factor. Step 1, factor out a greatest common factor. Step 2, count the number of terms. If there are 3 terms, then you try to unfoil, right? You remember the factoring rules that we did in the fall. So on the first one, is there a greatest common factor?
X squared.
And then x squared minus 9 has 2 terms. What's the only factoring technique that we know with 2 terms? Good, difference of perfect squares. It is subtract, and both of them are perfect squares, so we can factor as a difference of perfect squares. Identify the zeros. Well, the zeros are 3, negative 3, and 0. Do any of those have a multiplicity other than 1?
Yes.
Yeah. 0 has a multiplicity of 2 because of the square. Any questions about that? Next one. Greatest common factor.
X cubed X. I was going to get it at some point.
And then the second piece is left with 3 terms. So I try to unfoil it. I look at the factors of 3 that add to give me 4. They are both negative. None of them have a multiplicity higher than 1. And it's based on the way it's worded, I don't have to say anything unless the multiplicity is greater than 1. Okay, the next one. Is there a GCF? Remember, common, they all have to have it. What are the factors of 20 that subtract to give you 8? Any questions about that one? Andrew, have you taken? Yeah.
I was working more last night, not talking language, but I couldn't remember which one determines whether it's you're subtracting your middle number or you're adding it's your second.
And it also tells you whether these signs are the same or opposite. And since they're opposite, it creates more of a subtraction type of thought than an added addition to thought. Maybe 10 and 2, both of those have a multiplicity of 1. Okay. The next one does not have a greatest common factor. There are 3 terms, so I'm going to try to factor as a unfoil it. It is a little different, so we'll see if it works. Factors of 8 that subtract to give you 2. 2 and 4. What times itself gives you x to the 4th? X squared. Would you agree that x squared is what I'm going to have there to get an x to the 4th?
Oh, yeah.
Because this one's a little bit strange, you probably should FOIL it back out and make sure you did okay on factoring it. Because it was a tough one, since it had an x to the 4th and an x squared instead of normal. Does this keep factoring?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
One.
How do you know which one's way different?
Yeah, sorry. Does it keep factoring? Now the obvious zeros are 2 and negative 2. The x squared plus 2 is going to take me a little bit more work. We go read, it does say zeros, which gets us into a question we'll talk more about later, but I need to see if x squared plus 2 equals 0. Right? See if that equals 0. Subtract 2. Take the square root. Good. Now, sometimes it'll ask for x-intercepts. This wouldn't count as an x-intercept. Why not?
Because
It's not real. There's not a place it crosses the x-axis. If it asks for zeros, you can put it. It's an imaginary zero. It's not real.
it's fake stuff. It's not fake.
So we have to put that down as an answer.
If it asks for zeros, you do, but if it asks for x's, you don't.
Is that next to the fifth or
Oh, fifth.
the first one? So there's first thought is
Stay with me. It's an x to the fifth minus 4x cubed.
So would that be X?
Now, why can't I factor the x squared minus 3 again?
It's already
It's not a perfect
like
square, right? Now, technically, I suppose you could do x plus square root of 3 and x minus square root of 3 if you really wanted to do that.
Wait. 4x
But
squared.
it's not a perfect square.
So the 4x squared is the same as x to the fourth, and that's why it's x squared minus 1. Never mind.
How can you factor out the x when you still have an x squared and there's 3? Does that make it x cubed?
so X minus 3 is not perfect square cube.
Okay, which step are you on?
The last one. Where
The
it
last
has
one.
x, like, you know how you did x minus 1, which, okay, that's it. Okay.
This is the difference of perfect squares.
Oh, wow, never mind. I looked at one thing. I got you.
The obvious zeros are 0, 1, and negative 1. There's not as obvious zeros that I need to go find. Right, Levi? X squared minus 3 equals 0. A little bit extra when it doesn't finish factoring, when it doesn't factor all the way down. And on number 6, Grace common factor. 2, and I heard someone say it. I agree, I would rather take out a negative 2. It's going to make the rest of the factoring easier. Why would I want to do that?
You have to make like negative 4 and then inside the equation.
It makes it like one of our other factoring problems.
You can figure it out.
That one's a positive, so I can't. Yeah.
Oh.
1 and negative 1 are the obvious solutions. The x squared plus 2.
Plus minus 5 squared cube.
questions so far.
This stuff looks pretty.
It's not. It's some old factoring skills we're pulling back. Let's do yes. If it was a negative square root of 2.
It's hard to
Okay. I'm not talking as much as normal because I can't. But in between, I hear some of you doing some side conversations, which lets me think that you're not paying attention and taking notes. And you should be doing that even though I'm not standing here talking as much. It is review, but this is x cubed minus 25x. Question? I'm not getting a lot of questions. Is that because we know how to do this? Good. So I like you. But if you do have questions, please let me know. 24 subtract 5.
Jake.
Be nice to each other. I'm glad I'm not as mean as you are.
Hey, I can.
Those don't factor anymore. So what are the zeros? What do I have to do to find the zeros? Takes a little bit of work, doesn't it?
Plus minus square root plus minus 3.
Now, do we have to check these like we did before to see if the plus or minus both work?
Hey, as long as you do all the right work, they should all work. There's no denominators or square roots or weird things that might make it not work.
Can you put that 2 in front of the operator?
Yeah.
So in the equation earlier, didn't you factor out 3? You factor out 1. 3 is the difference per equation.
Yeah, the 1 and 4 and 9, 16, those are the ones you can keep. Last one. Close. And then combining it with what we did yesterday. I haven't asked this question in a while. Are there any of these that have a multiplicity more than 1?
No. Yes.
There's 0.
No. I don't see one. There can't be because there's nothing.
Oh, yes, there is. X minus 3. That's the one.
Okay.
And why haven't I asked that question in a while?
Oh, that's right.
None of them have, right? They've all been multiplicities of 1 until we get here. Now, it wasn't written as squared, but did you have the urge to put 3 down twice? That means it has multiplicity 2.
Okay, so it would have been x plus 3 and x minus 3. Would I not have it?
Right, it wouldn't have been a multiplicity of 2.
That's a 0, 3. Okay, gotcha.
He's saying that he's negative.
Okay, that's what the first part of your homework looks like. The second part of your homework looks like this. Which I hope you're saying looks exactly like your homework from.
What's that? You love
The
us.
only difference is
We have to factor it out.
we have to factor it out by the zeros. Last night it was already factored out. So try this one. That's that.
Like all the problems with organic concrete, like okay, look, I got so let's act like the initial part that was
Okay, so I get
Square. Zero.
and it didn't ask, but if it did ask about multiple, oh yes it does. Determine the multiplicity of each zero.
There's one.
We need more.
That's a multiplicity of 2, right?
Oh.
Why does 0 have a multiplicity of 2?
Has a square. 3 of 2.
Leading coefficient is 1. The degree is 4. If you could have looked at the original to find that stuff. As x approaches infinity, it rises, right? Because everything's positive, we got an even leading coefficient. Relative maximum and minimum, how do you find those?
Calculator.
Calculated. Did we do okay on those yesterday? I'm actually going to look back up here. Okay.
Took me a while to do stuff.
I don't know the relative maximums, and because we're getting low on time, I'm going to skip going and finding them. But I do know that this looks something like this, right? I just don't know how low those mins go. Other than that, I know exactly what this equation looks like. The maximum is 0, 0. The relative mins, find those in your calculator.
okay. The relative mints, what are those? Like I was getting like 50.
This thing right here.
Those.
And you go find them in your calculator.
What if it got a horizontal asymptote of 0?
He's never, he's not
Last night.
not horizontal. Not horizontal. Because they're polynomials. Good question. I'm trying to get there. Levi, what's your question? Okay. The last question you need to know is find the polynomial given the zeros. This is just backwards. So essentially it's like a Jeopardy question. I know the answer. What was the question? The zeros are 0, 1, and -4. What would the polynomial have been to get that? Right? Now it does say give your answer in standard form.
Square.
Stop talking. Yes. Right. Any questions about that? So we went completely backwards, right? That's how you do that. I want to give you a hint on ones that look like this. everyone okay with how I got that?
Yes, because they're just too quick.
Foil these two first. Why would I want to do that?
Christine,
Yes.
have Samantha McCarthy come to the office right before lunch.
Okay. When I do inner and outer, those inner and outer terms are going to cancel. Just give me x squared minus 4, right? And then I can FOIL these two. It's easier that way. Just a hint. Any questions about that? Your homework is that 6.3b works. So,